The opening round of the Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship headed to Rally North Wales, and defending champions Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer would start their season off as they meant to go on, setting fastest times throughout the day to keep adding to their lead and eventually finish with a 3-minute winning margin. After more than a year out of the seat, James Giddings and Ella Davies would return to the stages in their Evo and would be setting some great times as well. But things would take a small turn for the worse in the afternoon. They have a high-speed spin, which would eventually be the reason for them finishing third and not second. That did, however, play to the advantage of Dan O'Brien and Mark Glenister. The times close throughout the day, up until that spin for Giddings, meaning that the Fiesta WRC pair were able to take that second position with a small advantage over the Evo pair behind. It was a stunning drive from Rudy Lancaster and Guy Weaver that would see them finishing as the highest placed historic crew at the first round. And not only that, but they finished just outside the podium positions overall, with fourth place in the escort. Peter Bayliss and Paul Godden had a small mishap on stage 4. They hit the back wheel of the Evo. Thankfully, the issue didn't put them out of the rally altogether, and they were able to put in some good times through the afternoon, finishing in the end with 5th place, and the points to go with it at round 1. With a new engine in the car, and surely with it renewed confidence for this season, it will be a good opening round for Ben and Steve Smith. The son and father pairing settling in well to the new spec car, finishing with 6th place overall and winning Class W8. A puncture on stage 2 was the first issue for Simon Rogers and Jack Bowen in that ex-Latvala Evo, but it was a sign of things to come. It was followed by brake issues on stage 4. Not exactly the ideal start to the event or the season, but they pressed on throughout the day, taking 7th place in the points, a bit of damage limitation here at the opening round. Championship veterans and fan favourites Woodpecker and Bob Stocko put their wealth of experience to good use in the Welsh forests, as always, guiding their Impreza to 8th place overall. The times were actually the same as Rogers up ahead, but the Evo pairing were 2 seconds faster on the opening stage to be classified above Utting by the finish. An impressive first day on the gravel for Chris Richmond-Hand and Pete Fenner, which was a good job as they needed that car in one piece for a night rally straight after the event. They take 9th place for the points at round 1 and head off to do the Keene Road Rally. With Rudy Lancaster taking the W9 class honours, it will be Rob Dennis and Andy Boswell taking 2nd place. And that will be enough to drop them into the final place of the top 10 overall point scoring crews as well. David Tomlin and Keith Ashley, meanwhile, set the 3rd fastest time on stage 1 and were sticking with the podium positions on the next stage as well. But a spin would put them off the road on stage 3 and cost them time getting the car dug out. Eventually, they take 11th overall. Colin Minton and reigning Welsh junior co-driver champion Bonnie Papa would have a good clean run to guide the Tuts Clump Fiesta to 12th place overall. Unfortunately, though, the day wouldn't be so kind to Steve Hollis and Tim Curry. They'd break a drive shaft on the start line of stage 4, having to retire the VW Golf R32 at service and just praying for some reliability for the rest of the season. In the W7 class, it would be victory for Peter Hinton and Lewis Sim, and they'd started to pick up the pace as the day went on. Reigning W5 class champions Julian Burley and Emir Hall got their title defence off to a great start with victory at round 1 in the Sunbeam. And it's Tim Phelps and Elwyn Manuel out in the new car. Sadly, it didn't go to plan for them. They rolled it on stage 3. Things had gone a little better though for Tim's brother. Jeff Phelps and Colin Jenkins have a great event in their Mark II Escort to take the W11 class victory. And last year's W12 class winners Andrew and Jamie Lee Fox suffered a rare retirement on the event when the rear diff failed at the start of stage 2. That playing into the hands of Gareth Humphreys and Adam Burkill, who were a little surprised to finish the event with that class win. W10 class-winning regulars Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher start their season off in style. A win here on the opening round was a great way to open the account in their familiar Honda Civic. There was bad luck though for Dave and Freddie Brick. They looked set for a good result here, and we know that they can pedal that car well, but they'd retire on the way to the very last stage of the event with fuel pump problems. So round one of the Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship was over in a flash. Here's a reminder of how the overall results looked one round into the championship. Round two of the championship headed a little further south to the somewhat worse conditions of the 7 rally stages. Heavy rain, fog and plenty of wind greeted our crews. But none of that would stop round one winners and reigning multiple Welsh rally champions Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer. They put in a stunning performance once again to take win number 2 of the season. It wasn't all plain sailing though. A misfire through the afternoon would be playing on their mind. But they drove to the issue and got those maximum points. Their closest rivals by the end of the event will be Rob Wilson and Martin Haggett. They were pushing the Evo hard, as always. Plenty of big skids for the spectators braving the conditions, and it was that brave driving that secured the pair second place at this round. They hadn't held that spot all day though. Russ Thompson and Stephen Link had been in second place through the morning, but a spin on stage 5 saw them drop down the order a little. Despite that small setback, they still secure themselves a strong third place finish here at the 7 Valley stages. And having finished third on the previous round, it will be another strong result here on round 2 for James Giddings and Aled Davies. A spin in the afternoon, not costing them too much time, but things like that can always upset the rhythm, which would eventually guide the Evo pair to a 4th place finish, putting them solidly second in the championship points after as many rounds. Playing to their wealth of experience once again here were Will Gutting and Bob Stocko. And experience would be valuable with those foggy conditions out on the stages. And they have a good clean run. Not more than a change of tyres needed for the afternoon. And the pair would finish in 5th. Rudy Lancaster and Guy Weaver were on top form again after that impressive first round performance, winning the historic W9 class once again here at round 2. It wasn't an easy victory though by any stretch of the imagination, putting the car in a ditch briefly on the second stage of the day. But they did get it back out again and ended the event in a 6th place finish. Ian Roberts and Daniel Jones would guide the G3 Escort round to a 7th place finish. A misfire on the final stage would be a little cause for concern, but they make it to the finish okay, and with a good, solid overall result as well. A returning overheating problem would dog Peter Bayliss and Paul Godden's day, meaning they'd have to turn the anti-lag off on some of the longer stages. But it didn't hurt the times too much, remarkably, managing to take an 8th place finish by the end of the rally. David Tomlin, meanwhile, would start the day off the wrong way entirely. A spin on stage 1, but with that out of the way, he and co-driver Ian Beaumont were able to guide the Fiesta to 9th place in the championship points. Hard-charging Welshman Chris Richmond-Hand, with Ryan Jones alongside, would put in another strong performance at this round, scoring another top 10 finish and maintaining a lead in the Welsh Challenge as well, moving up to 6th in the overall series as well, with this finish in that Road Rally Spec Escort. There were plenty of crews not having as much luck as that though. Dan O'Brien and Mark Glenister retiring on the opening stage with turbo issues. Perry Gardner and Jack Bowen having to call it a day on stage 3 when the brakes failed on their Fiesta as well. And for Simon Rogers and Aid Williams, it would be retirement as well. Transmission failure on stage 4. It would be bad news for Steve Hollis and Tim Curry as well in the Golf. They don't make it to the afternoon loop of stages, still looking for some reliability in that screaming V6 engined machine. And speaking of engines, Colin Minton and Tim Green didn't even have one in the car a few days before the rally. But the team worked hard to get them there. Sadly, they'd have rear diff problems on stage 1 and a sticking throttle on stage 4, eventually going OTL with these issues. After retirement on the previous round, Andrew and Jamie Lee Fox had the bit between their teeth. They were more determined than ever for a finish here, and things had gone well for the pair all day, giving them the W12 class victory by the finish. In the W10 class, it was victory for Alain Dubois in that rear-wheel drive Peugeot. Always great to see the car out, co-driven for the first time by Lucy Gutteridge this season. They take the win over round one winners Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher. And it was a convincing victory in the W2 class for Ashley Francis Adams and Mark Ammons, getting the Micra to the end of the event and at all sorts of angles to take the points in the class. That win coming over Paddy Homan and Sam Spencer. They'd lost the rear brakes on the final stage and had to change the bias to the front, but they were able to continue, crucially, and with not bad pace either, to take second in the class. Lewis Hooper and Rhys Edwards, meanwhile, would put in a solid performance in the Fiesta R2, finishing the second round with victory in the junior section of the event this weekend. We were clocking up the rounds at a rate of knots at this stage of the season. With round two complete, here's a reminder of how those overall results were decided. Following the unfortunate cancellation of the Plains Rally, which should have been the next event in the series, the crews returned to action after a longer than planned break and headed to Builth Wells for the Nikki Grist stages. In stark contrast to the opening two rounds, it would be a disappointing end to the rally for Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer. They were quickest through the opening stage, but throttle position sensor failure would see them parked up by the end of the stage and going no further. So that meant a new name at the top of the leaderboard for the first time this season. And taking up that honour will be Russ Thompson and Stephen Leake. They wouldn't have it easy though. A puncture on the second stage of the day and a spin a little later into the rally would cost them time. But it wouldn't matter, and they take maximum points from round three. Made all the more sweet by the fact that they'd rolled the car on a non-championship round a few weeks earlier and had a mammoth task to get things going for this weekend. The car a bare shell just days before the event. James Giddings and Aled Davies seemed to be having some kind of issue on each of the morning stages, not least this spin on stage one, coming in a little too hot and spinning the car. Thankfully no damage done, apart from to the tyres. And they'd have a much cleaner afternoon, ending the event in second. And in fact, that would secure them the lead in the championship standings after 3 rounds. There was yet more bad luck for Dan O'Brien and Mark Glenister. They would have finished in second place based on times, but a timing issue meant stage 2 results were cancelled and they dropped back on the overall leaderboard to finish in third place. Bob Morgan and Aid Williams had rolled the car on a recent event, repairing it just in time for this round of the championship. And it would be a good job that they did. A spin on stage 2 didn't help the cause, but they managed a good run overall to take 4th place here on the Nikki Grist stages. David Tomlin and Keith Ashley would continue their good form this season with a 5th place finish. And they'd have some brake issues in the morning, but aside from that, it was plain sailing, relatively speaking. And this result also puts them 5th overall in the championship standings at this stage as well. Robert Goff and Jez Rogers had a great day on the stages in that W9 Class Escort, ending the rally with a trouble-free run to 6th place in the overall points. Colin Griffiths and Mark Morgan entertained us with a small overshoot on stage 1, but otherwise it was a good weekend for the pair in the Subaru to take 7th place in the points this weekend. The hard-charging Rudy Lancaster and Guy Weaver were out in a new car for the first time and looking to build on those results they put on the board so far this season. Taking a while to get used to things though, the handling was a little different to the previous one, but by the afternoon things were coming together well and you could see it. The pair would take 8th place overall today, maintaining their W9 class lead at that point in the season. And Mike and Nicola Brown would have a good weekend to end the rally in 9th overall. Preparation for the event had been unusual to say the least, with the pair going through the notes and planning over WhatsApp, as Mike lives in London while sister Nicola lives in Edinburgh. It was another day to forget, though, for Peter Bayliss and Paul Godden. They almost rolled the Evo in Stage 3 and would have to drive for much of Stage 4 on a puncture. But despite these issues, they still take 10th place points this weekend. Damage limitation, to say the least. Lewis Hooper and Rhys Edwards enjoyed a good, clean run to take their second junior victory of the season. And that would give Hooper the lead in the under-25 standings as well in the Fiesta. A good result at this round sees Jeff Phelps and Colin Jenkins taking the lead of the two-wheel drive championship. And they'd catch a car on Stage 2 of the event this weekend, but it didn't stop them finishing well by the end of the day. Jonathan Brace and Paul Spooner, meanwhile, would have an issue with a slipping clutch for the morning loop of stages. The problem fixed for the afternoon, and the pair able to guide the Mark I Escort to a W8 class win. As usual, Jonathan brought along plenty of Brace's bakery supplies for the marshals on the event, which is, as we know, always appreciated. You know we love a bit of variety here at Special Stage, and Neville Breach was out giving us some of that on only his second event in the Avenger. Used to competing in sprints and hill climbs, and the other difference, of course, being a co-driver sat with him. Tony Vart was calling the notes this weekend, and the pair were loving the adventure. Going well too, to take the W5 class win. And it was back to class-winning ways for Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher. They take their second class victory of the season in the W10 class, fighting off plenty of competition in the class as well for that result. So with that, the Nikki Grist stages was complete, and a new look top 10 for this round. The leaderboard shaping up like this. By the time round 4 of the Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship was upon us, most of us and the crews were wondering how on earth we'd got to this point of the season so quickly. The fog was back, thankfully this time without the rain, and a trip to some new territory for the Woodpecker stages based this year in Newtown. One crew who seemingly were not going to let the lack of visibility get to them will be winners from last time out, Russ Thompson and Stephen Link. Apart from a bit of a wrong tyre choice through the morning, they had a great run and would secure victory number 2, enough to put them third in the standings after 4 rounds. For James Giddings and Aled Davies, who, let's not forget, had had a year out of the seat prior to this season, it would be second. They had a bit of an issue with the handbrake on some of the tighter corners, but would put in some brave times through the fog to take that second place this weekend convincingly, remaining in the lead of the championship standings as a result. It was a stunning drive for Tom Llewellyn and Sean Williams in the Escort as they take the final step on the podium. That does, of course, give them the W9 class victory this weekend as well. A great finish, having not been in the car for 6 months. Colin Griffiths and Mark Morgan would score their best result of the season this weekend. A 4th place finish on the new look Woodpecker. A spin did cost them a bit of time, but it was their only problem on the day. They also score maximum points in the 57 Tyres Welsh Challenge as well with that finish. Simon Rogers returns to the stages after not being out since the Severn Valley, this time partnered by James Howe. A good battle all day, eventually seeing the Evo 6 pair taking 5th place in the points from this round. And Rudy Lancaster and Guy Weaver enjoyed a trouble-free run this weekend, finishing in 6th place. They do finish second in the class behind Llewellyn, but the good news is that this result keeps them safely in the lead of the class for the season tally so far. Possibly even more impressive is the fact that they move up to 2nd overall in the Welsh Championship as well. Meanwhile, Adam Durston-Hillier and Chris Davies would score one of their best results as they end the rally in 7th. A strong weekend for the Evo pair and some good points on the championship board. And finally, for Steve Hollis and Tim Curry, a bit of reliability. They get their first finish of the season in that Jaguar V6 engined Golf. It wasn't without its issues, but the pair got to the end of the event in 8th place. Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer were out this weekend in the new Skoda, and it had started well with the lead on the first stage of the day, letting everyone know exactly what they were intending. But the pair would slide off the road on stage 2, getting the car stuck and losing around 6 minutes in the process, dropping down to the bottom of the leaderboard as a result. Thankfully, they do get some help to get back on the road and set fastest times on the remaining 5 stages to work their way back up to 9th place and at least keep their championship hopes alive with that ominous pace. Ewan Roberts and Daniel Jones had a freshly rebuilt engine in that G3 Escort this weekend and were putting it to good use. Their second class victory of the season and also finishing with 10th place overall. Looking for better luck this time out, Perry Gardner and Jack Bowen were setting some great times in the Fiesta, up to 2nd overall at one point in fact. But their event would eventually come to an end when they spun and got stuck in a ditch on the 6th stage. There was frustration for Dylan Fowler-Bishop and Dan Evans as well, who would suffer a puncture on the very first stage of the day. But after that, it was plain sailing and it was flat out to take the junior category victory this weekend in that rapid little Nissan Micra. It had been a good fight as well, with current leaders of the junior category Lewis Hooper and Rhys Edwards. Another good result this weekend, seeing that junior title getting a little closer as we go into the final part of the season. Greg Mills and Andrew Sankey would take a well-deserved W10 class victory this weekend in that 1600 Toyota-engined Ford Escort. But it would be a continued lead in the class so far this season for Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher, who finished 2nd in the class this weekend to keep that title well within their grasp. It was the 2nd class win in a row, though, for Neville Breach, co-driven this time by Martin Corbett. They take the W5 class victory here on the Woodpecker stages. And here's Neil James, co-driven this weekend by Siobhan Pugh, who would take the W7 class win this weekend in their Mark II Escort. But it would be 2nd placed Peter Hinton and Lewis Sim still leading the class in the championship season overall so far. Brake issues had been a bit of a setback for Jonathan Brace and Paul Spooner through the morning stages, but they'd make a good comeback from that to take the W8 class win by the finish in their Mark I Escort. The Woodpecker may have had a new look, but it still delivered all the action and excitement that we'd come to expect. And it had come to an end with the results at the end of the rally looking like this. Round 5 of the Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship headed for the seaside town of Llandudno and the Cambrian Rally. And the weather was being kind to the crews this time out. After a blistering start, but some bad luck after that. There were not that many chances this season so far to get those points on the board, so a big push was required for Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer over the morning stages, and they did just that, getting a lead of over a minute and setting them up nicely for a good, steady but fast drive through the afternoon, taking their first championship victory in that new Skoda and putting their championship hopes back on track ahead of the final round. Winners of the previous 2 rounds, Russ Thompson and Stephen Link, were not able to match the pace of that Skoda in their Evo. They'd been sitting as close behind the leaders, though, as they possibly could, ready to pick up the pieces should anything go wrong. But with no issues up ahead, they'd have to settle for 2nd place. That does, however, move them into the lead of the championship with just 1 round to go when dropped scores were taken into account. It was a blistering drive from Ewan Roberts and Daniel Jones to complete the podium here on the Cambrian, clearly trying all day and entertaining the spectators in that G3 Escort. The top-placed 2-wheel drive crew as well on the results this weekend. That result enough to secure Daniel the 2-wheel drive co-driver's title for the season, even before the final round had begun. There was more misfortune in a mixed bag of a season for the leaders of the championship coming into this round. James Giddings and Alec Davies suffering a head gasket issue and having to see the car pulled over and overheating, retiring in order to save the engine for the final round. David Tomlin and Keith Ashley would score another strong result though in their Fiesta R5. They were having some issues with the water temperature but survived that to take 4th place overall. A A small steering issue early into the event just wasn't enough to dampen the enthusiasm for Rob Goff and Jez Rogers. They overcome those issues, ending the day with a W9 class win and also taking 5th overall. And despite an unfortunate puncture early into the rally, it would be a good, clean run overall after that for Wyedean and Bob Stocko. Their 6th place finish this weekend also reflected with 6th in the championship standings as well, with 1 round left to go. Ashley Francis Adams and Mark Ammons put in some strong times to not only finish with 7th overall this weekend, but also secure the W2 class title for the season. A giant killing drive today and on previous rounds from this blistering micro pair. Sam Mason and James Seymour, though, would be the ones taking the victory in the junior class this weekend, as well as taking an impressive 8th place overall. The Fiesta pair having a great run this weekend on these iconic North Wales stages. It was Gareth Bevan and Craig Nelson taking 9th place in the Welsh Championship points with a good clean run in the Escort. They also take the W8 class win this weekend. Meanwhile, Lewis Hooper and Rhys Edwards were having some issues with the fuel at this round, having to settle in the end for 2nd place in the class as a result. But that was enough for them to take the junior title for the season, not quite going out on a high as surely they would have intended, but they take it nonetheless. Gary Smith and Clive Jones would just miss out on a top 10 finish, but 2nd place in the class would keep them in the lead of W8 going into the final round, and with it all to play for. Michael Jenkins and Jordan Joins would get their name on the top of the W10 results this time out. A good strong finish for the pair, and they were just 15 points now behind Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher in the fight for the class this season. Another class title going down to the wire. So we reached the end of the penultimate round of the championship with a showdown in our sights. Here's a reminder of how those results looked at the finish of round 5, the Cambrian Rally in Llandudno. Round 6 of the Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship had arrived, and it was a classic. For the final round, the crews gathered at the Wyedean Rally, the last chance to change the results and claim those final available positions, including, it went down to the wire, the overall championship title victory. Andrew Stokes and Johnny Tad Evans finished off their season with a bang, taking the W8 class win in that familiar Mark I Escort. Sadly, though, for us and the fans, Andrew would announce that this was the last event he'd be doing. He ends his rally career on a high on his local event. The win in the W7 class this weekend would go to Peter Hinton. The historic class title was his as well, after a great season in the Escort. Co-driven this weekend by Dean Mitchell, although it would be Lewis Sim taking the historic class title for co-drivers. 3 class wins in as many rounds would give Neville Breach the historic Class W5 win for the season, co-driven this weekend by Martin Corbett. And Sam Mason and James Seymour do just enough to take the on the pace note and restruct Welsh junior category on the Wyedean, but it was only enough for the runner-up spot in the season behind Lewis Hooper. Luke Watts and Matt Rogers had lost first gear on stage 4, but with the cars into service, they were able to get that sorted and would take the W2 class win here on their home event, securing the runner-up spot in the championship as well. It would end up being a pretty strong season for Andrew and Jamie Lee Fox by the end in the BMW. They take the Class W12 win this weekend. 2nd place in that class was enough for Dan Chester and Stephen Davey, though, to take the class title for the season in their BMW, which they were driving with plenty of gusto this weekend. Swapping the familiar Formula 2 Nissan Sunny for a Corsa kit car, Chris Butcher and Jonathan Hawkins would take the W10 class victory on the Wyedean this weekend. Their first class win of the season as well in that Corsa. But it would be 2nd place for Martin Walters and Marie Fletcher, which would be more pertinent on this particular day. That enough to secure them the class championship title for yet another season. Jeff Phelps and Colin Jenkins had led the two-wheel drive and W11 class earlier in the season, but they'd unfortunately missed out, having finished in a runner-up spot at the final round. Not helped with an overshoot on stage 3. They did take 10th place overall, though, to round off a pretty impressive season. It was another new co-driver here for the final round for Colin Minton, Harry Walshaw alongside, and the pair would have a good run at this final round of the championship. In fact, one of Colin's best results of the season. They end the weekend with 9th in the points on the Wyedean. A strong day in the seat for Rob Dennis and Andrew Boswell would see them jump up the order in the Hockley Motorsport two-wheel drive championship, not putting a single foot wrong all day to end the rally with 8th place overall. And Gary Bollins and Nigel Baldwin bring the super shopping car out for a run in these Welsh forests, securing their best result of the season, getting themselves a 7th place finish to round out the Pirelli Welsh Championship year. Colin Griffiths and Mark Morgan, meanwhile, would end their season with a good finish as well. The Subaru pair had a bit of an incident on the first stage when they ended up driving up a bank, but they didn't do any damage, luckily for them, and would continue to take a 6th place finish this weekend. Rob Wilson and Martin Haggett could have gone well this weekend, but unfortunately for them, they have problems on stage 1, running wide and hitting a bank, breaking the drive shaft on the Evo. The time lost and the time on the remaining stages showed that they could possibly have fought for a victory even, but as it stands, they'd have to settle for 5th place. Another bittersweet day for another popular rally driver. Simon Rogers and James Howe had a bit of an overshoot on the first stage of the day, but after that, the pace in that yellow Evo 6 was fantastic. The time's looking good, the pair eventually taking 4th place at the end of the rally. Simon, very sadly for us, announcing at the finish that this was in fact his final rally. He was hanging up the helmet after 37 years of gracing our sport with sideways and entertaining action. Tom Llewellyn and Ross Whittock had a great end to the season. 3rd place, narrowly missing out on 2nd here at the final round. But they do, of course, take the two-wheel drive class win and the W9 win as well with that performance. Bob Morgan and Aid Williams hadn't been out since the Nikki Grist stages in July, but they looked like they had a point to prove, and they got back into the swing of things right away. The Skoda pair had a spin in the afternoon, but apart from that, things had gone to plan. They take a 2nd place finish here at the final round. But the final chapter of the 2024 Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship would be saved for this pair. It was a big story for Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer. They have a strong final round, taking victory, and in doing so, getting themselves a record-breaking 4th Pirelli Welsh Rally Championship title. It hadn't been an easy season, perhaps their toughest so far, but things came together in the final rounds, thanks to the team and thanks to a new car. The pair finish on a high once again here in the Welsh Championship. So before we get some reaction from our champions, here's a look at how the overall results looked at the final round of the season, the Wyedean Rally.
Matt Deck, what a fantastic end to the season for you. Record-breaking 4 times Pirelli Welsh champions. You've got to be happy.
Yeah, look, what a great way to end the year. It's been challenging at points. We've had ups and downs, but I suppose that's rallying, and what a great way to end the year. The Wyedean's a good event, you know, lots of spectators out, and yeah, it's good to finish it off in style.
And you've obviously moved away from the Ford into this fantastic Skoda now, and all right in that silly seat for you?
Yeah, it's pretty comfy in there, to be honest. It's good. It's and the boy can pedal it, so yeah.
He certainly can. And what's it been like transitioning from that Ford to the Skoda? It seems to have been like faultless for you.
Look, it's been a turning point. I wouldn't say it's a massive step. It's, you know, little bits here and there, but those little bits add up to quite a big step, I suppose. And yeah, obviously a big question mark when we bought the car, how we were going to transition to it, and minus the little hiccup on the Woodpecker, it's gone seamlessly, so couldn't be happier.
Yeah, really happy for you both. Well done. Fantastic end to the season. Congratulations. Pirelli Welsh Champions 2024.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Dave, congratulations! 15 fantastic years with the Welsh Championship here. You must be so proud of what you've achieved.
Yeah, it's been a great 15 years, you know. And today we've seen a good turnout on the Wyedean, excellent event. It was also the first event that I took charge of back in 2010. So yeah, it's good to finish back here in the Forest of Dean.
I said on the microphone earlier, you won't be able to stay still. You're going to have to be back out doing some sort of role in rallying at some point. So we will see you out there and about, won't we? I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in some shape or form, you'll see us there. Like, really, to be fair, you know, we've got a few ideas, and we shall see. We shall see if we can make those come to fruition. And be good. And I'd like to say thank you, guys, special stage team. Both of you, Wayne and Phil, for doing a brilliant job covering the championship. All these things have added up to us being where we are and what we've done in the last 15 years. So thank you very much, lads. It's great.
That's very kind. But it starts at with you. So much appreciated from everybody around the sport. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Enjoy your retirement, and we'll see you out on the stages at some point soon. Thank you, Dave.
Yep, no worries. Thank you very much. Okay, cheers, boys. That's